Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Factor Uncensored tonight. The Texas House has given preliminary approval to a bill that would create a school choice program. Under the bill, $1 billion will go into education savings accounts, which are taxpayer-funded incentives for people to switch from public to private schools. It would give parents around $10,000 each school year to put towards private school tuition and school expenses. The House still needs to record a final vote on this bill, which is largely a formality. Then it heads back over to the Senate, where both chambers iron out their differences on their versions of the legislation. Why should you care? That's why we are here tonight. Our guests are here in the Factor studio. Joining us, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, political analyst Angela Box, reunited again. I guess it feels so good. Houston City Council member Annette Murray. Annette Murray, baby. And you're not a Houston City Council member.
Oh, but I'm an educator though.
Educator. Jackie Anderson of the Houston Federation of Teachers and conservative radio host Claver Kamal Imani. Glad to have you all here on the Factor Uncensored. So Ron, you just left Austin. Why should we care? First, before you get biased and give us your opinion, why should we care about this program that is going to be passed by the Texas legislature?
I do have a correction for you. It did pass on second reading, so it did pass the House on final passage this afternoon. So
got it.
We did do that. We passed the first time at 3:15 a.m., second time around noon. So why should we care? Because our tax dollars pay for our public schools. These are our collective tax dollars. All Texans pay taxes, and these taxes pay for the voucher that we just passed. $1 billion that's taken away from our neighborhood public schools. That's why we should care, because our neighborhood public schools is where everyone goes to get an education, regardless of their zip code, their race, their socioeconomic status, people with disabilities, people with learning ailments, everything. They go to public schools. They can't say, no, we don't want you, Arnetta, to go to our public school. We want her. Private schools can do that. That's why we should care, because they give students a fair shot to compete in a global economy. That is what neighborhood public schools do. This voucher scam, it takes that public money to subsidize wealthy families taking their kids from the neighborhood public school to the private school that they can already afford to do. And our private schools, our public schools are suffering. They're hemorrhaging. They're going to have larger class sizes, and many of them will likely shut down, particularly those in rural areas where they don't have a damn private school in them. Many of the counties in this state don't have any private schools.
Okay, so really quick, let's get
care.
Claver in here. Why is this a benefit? Do you see this as a benefit for children, students
like
here
I brought
in
my
Texas?
notes.
She got the notes.
You're doggone right. I do my homework, especially when Ron's going to be a bunch of Democrats all around.
All your life you had to fight,
Education
Claver.
has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. It's all about the kids.
That's right. It should be a nonpartisan issue.
If it is all about the kids, and if it is nonpartisan, then let's be truthful about it. Our outcomes are terrible in our public schools.
And who's been in charge for the past 30 years?
You said nonpartisan, did you not? Did you say nonpartisan?
Been in charge?
Okay,
So
all I want to know is everybody does not go to public schools. My wife and I decided we wanted to homeschool our child, and we still had to pay our property taxes, and our child did indeed receive academic national acclamation and acclaim, and is doing fantastic in an institute of higher learning. Why did we get it out of public schools? Because the schools were failing so bad. The outcomes in the state of Texas as far as public schooling is concerned, we're looking at 29th or 44th, depending on the ranking, out of 50 states. And we just, every biennium, we increase the budget. 70% of our budget, our $322 billion budget, biennium budget, 70% of it is education and health care. And the biggest driver of local debt in the state of Texas is our public school system through these bond issues.
All right, let's hear from Jackie Anderson now. Jackie,
we're not getting the outcomes.
Let's hear from you, Jackie. Why do you think this is a raw deal for the children of Texas?
Because it's not school choice, it's school's choice. They will take the students they want,
That's right.
and they will push the others aside.
And you mean private schools?
Private schools will do that. But, and you're speaking about paying taxes. I pay taxes and I don't have a child in school either. But guess what? That's my civic duty. Taxes, public dollars go to public education, and public is for the greater good. You can't take tax dollars that's meant for the railroad or for the highway and do your driveway. You can't take tax dollars that's meant for public recreation or whatever and put a pool in your yard. That's a part of your civic duty to pay your taxes. I have nothing against anybody who wants to put their child in private school. That's your business. But it shouldn't be, you should foot that bill with your own money and not public tax dollars.
All right, Angela, let's hear from you. How do you think this will benefit the children of Texas?
It'll benefit. It's kind of a wild flex to sit up here and hear some of my TV husband. I love him so much, but a very strange flex to talk about how these somehow that these children that are in these failing schools are not the ones who are going to benefit most from these school vouchers. The children, these schools are failing. The STAR test last year, 2%. From the year before, not the best. I think what you're saying is interesting, and I did not think about what they were saying before like this, but I will say this. Black and brown students, most of all, are hurting in these public schools. We have students that don't have, there's no discipline standards anymore, behavior's out of control, kids can't learn. If we take schools and treat them like a business, if you say a business, a capitalistic system, every school is going to get better and better and better to compete with those tax dollars. Are there things that can be worked out? Sure. But I think overall, we're talking about the students who have been suffering the most in public schools, which are minority children. It's not white kids that are suffering. It's black and brown students who are going to benefit from this.
And we'll continue this conversation with our panel in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. We continue our discussion on the House's controversial decision to approve a private school voucher program. We posted a poll this afternoon on Isaiah Factor Instagram page asking if you agree with the decision. A majority voted no at 79%, and 21% voted yes. Our guests are back. And Arnetta Murray, we want to bring you into this conversation. Your concern, obviously, is special needs children. That's your specialty as an educator out there. So how do you think they will fall and fare in a system like this?
We already know that in the public school system that special ed is needed and required. But we also know that with the vouchers, they don't have to accept those kids. We know that at the end of the day that we have to be held accountable publicly for special ed students with paperwork, with documentation, that is public. But within the private sector, they don't have to do that. So we already know it's going to be a downward spiral. Number two, I heard earlier about the black and brown kids. Black and brown kids, some of them can't afford, their parents can't afford the money for a private school, even if they get the voucher. So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're making decisions not based on party lines, but based on the children and based on public ed. Let me say, I'm done. I'm a product of public education. So I keep hearing the narrative that public ed is bad. No, it's not. There are some discrepancies. Yes, they need to be fixed, but there are some discrepancies in private education too. It's with the narrative that we're painting, and we got to straighten that up right now. And so I think it's important that we got to look at both sides, and we're not doing that.
And Claver, let me bring you back into this conversation. One of the things she mentioned, and State Representative Jolanda Jones mentioned this yesterday, even if your children are accepted, if they get accepted into private school, and you have that voucher, and you're able to pay for school, what about transportation? No buses, no free buses for those students. What about lunch? No free lunch programs. How do you make up that if they are in private school and they can't afford to even get to school?
I would point to our citizens here in Texas at the recent protest activity at the state capitol in Illinois, where the same type of voucher program was being proposed and similarly passed. Over the last couple of sessions here in Texas, these types of voucher programs have been put forth, and it is those like homeschool parents and those whose children do go to private school that find the voucher program to be distasteful. Why? Because if you take the money, you're not escaping the government system. Why do we take our children out of government school because we don't want those standards and that indoctrination, if you will, put on our children. If you take that voucher money, you better make sure that there's no strings that's not tied to it, to that voucher money. In other words, government standards still being applied, although you've taken your child out of government school. That is something that those of us who are really against that voucher program, the 79% isn't just because it's money coming out of the public school system. It's because you're attaching still government strings, government mandates on our children, and we don't want that.
Okay. Netta, you're saying, you're shaking your head
when he was saying what he was saying about the mandates. At the end of the day, I don't agree with that. What you were saying earlier, that they're going to still have mandates. Of course, they're going to have some mandates, but it's not going to be major mandates. It's not because when you're a private school, you can do what you want.
That's right.
You can do exactly what you want. There's no accountability. You don't have to show how many kids got bullied, how many kids you kicked out. You're not going to say that because you're painting a positive narrative. But in the interim, my issue is there's a lot of good people, a lot of good teachers doing the hard work in public ed that you all don't want to talk about because you want to paint the narrative that public education is bad. Does it have problems? Yes, but so does private education as well.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back here with the Factor Uncensored. Right. And welcome back to the Factor Uncensored. We're talking about school choice programs. Angela, one of the questions I had, and many parents have, how do you prevent these fly-by-night private schools from setting up shop just to make money here in Texas with this new opportunity that they could be looking at?
I mean, I will say this is a very interesting conversation, I think, and some things have been brought up that I didn't even really consider. I don't know how that works. And to Claver's point about government, a lot of parents take their kids out of the public school system because they don't want that indoctrination or the constraints of what a public school is going to do. I don't know if it's just, are we substituting one system for another system? I feel like there's got to be a way to kind of, not split the baby, if you will, but like look at what's really going on in the schools. I mean, discipline is a big problem in schools, discipline problems. The curriculum is, big education is a business just like anything else. When I was a teacher, every 2 years it'd be like, well, let's try this new thing. And it was always, you're trying something new, It's constant professional development. It's as administrators down teachers' throats. Like, teaching is about 1/4 of what I actually did. And if teachers could get back to actually teaching, I think we would see less of a need for a voucher system. Get back to discipline, get back to basics, and get back to what works. And maybe we would.
Really quick, Ron, for those who are also saying, when we talk about the homeschool aspect, there could be parents who commit fraud there and may apply and not even have children.
So one of the things that I thought you were going to touch on is there is no accountability for the private schools. Very little. The public schools have to have transparency and accountability when it comes to reporting discipline, when it comes to reporting all kind of things. Private schools don't have that. They don't have to take the STAR. They don't have to have certified teachers. They don't have to accept those students with autism or students with disabilities in a wheelchair. They don't have to accept black kids. They can't say, I'm not taking them because they're black, but they don't have to take them. The public school has to take every kid and make sure they have a quality public education.
Jackie, was this rushed? Was this rushed?
Well, I don't think it was rushed because they've been trying to get this in for quite some time.
Yeah.
But what I think happened is the billionaires came in and started buying. This is actually bought by them.
That's right.
So this is what happened. The people with the money, the oligarchs, came in and they've taken over. They've taken over everything.
And Ron, it's my understanding you guys said yesterday many of the rural Republicans were against this until they were threatened.
No, they were threatened, y'all, by Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump, the Republican caucus had a meeting. They had a meeting with Governor Abbott, and in that meeting, they had a surprise call from President Trump. He called and said that they better pass that voucher bill as is, because we were going to have a constitutional amendment to let the voters of Texas decide if they wanted vouchers. That was the play. There was support for that until they had that Republican conference, and President Trump said they will get rid of these Republicans if they voted in favor of vouchers. You showed the poll. The majority of Texans are against it.
Really quick, Claver, does that give you any pause?
No,
Food for thought?
look, I think what we're doing right here is, yes, it's a great discussion. It's a highbrow debate, but the bottom line is, what are the outcomes to the children? And Texas is awful when it comes to the outcomes. So we can talk about funding, we can talk about curriculum, we can talk about what private schools can do, what charter schools can do, what public schools can do. But overall, the students of Texas are getting cheated, and they are underachieving, and they're not upholding global standards that's going to be for their future and their prosperity.
All right, Arnetta?
I disagree. That being said, let's be honest.
The numbers don't lie.
The reason why private schools was instituted in the first place, because when segregation happened, they wanted to segregate schools.
That's right.
Then private schools came to play. So listen, the essence of it all is to dismantle education. Right. Bottom line, and let me say this, you gotta quit saying it is not all public schools are bad. These teachers are working their ass off. I don't know what school your child's at, I don't know where you at, but I'm here to tell you as an educator, in the trenches, we are not that bad. It's some issues need to be fixed, but it's not that bad, and I need this narrative to change.
All right,
I'm done.
Angela, wrap us up, 30 seconds.
I mean, coming as someone who was a public school teacher, I understand what you're talking about. I really, really do. There's got to be a way to come to a consensus to change things that need to be changed and to get back to basics, which we all want the kids to learn, and we want them to be functioning members of society. And we live in a civil society, and we need to have children who know how to behave. Parents, and parents need the training too, quite frankly. So, that's a whole. She's like, she not wrong. She not wrong. I'm prepared with Angela.
All right. Great conversation, guys. Thank you. And of course, this conversation will continue on as we move closer to implementing this program statewide.